My ex-wife turned my life into a living nightmare for money. I deserve everything you own, she spat during our divorce. I never fought back, just let the process play out. On the day she thought she'd won it all, her lawyer called with news that made her collapse when she learned about my secret. Initial post. I, 38M, should have seen the signs much earlier. But you know how it goes when you're in love. Red flags just look like flags. Rachel and I had been married for 11 years when everything fell apart. We met in our mid-20s, built what I thought was a solid life together. No kids, thank God for that small mercy, now, and I genuinely believed we were happy. The first hint something was off came when I noticed Rachel had started staying out later and later with her work friends. She works in marketing, not my field at all, which made it easier for her to dismiss my questions by saying I wouldn't understand her industry networking. I never pushed, because trust was our thing, or so I thought. Then came the credit card bills, shopping sprees I knew nothing about, weekend retreats that cost thousands. When I finally brought it up, she exploded, saying I was financially controlling and that she deserved nice things after working so hard. But the kicker came 8 months ago when I found texts on her phone. Yeah, I know it's shitty to look, but when your wife is hiding her screen every time you walk by, something's up. Turns out it wasn't just spending behind my back, she'd been sleeping with her boss Theo for over a year. When I confronted her, I expected denial, tears, maybe even remorse. What I got instead was cold calculation. So what? She said, barely looking up from her phone. It's not like you've been exciting in years. That night, she didn't come home. The next morning, I got an email from her lawyer. She wanted a divorce, and in her words, everything you've ever worked for. I was stunned, but managed to keep my cool. I didn't throw things, didn't scream, didn't even call her. I just quietly contacted a divorce attorney the next day, Curtis, an old college buddy who'd become one of the top divorce lawyers in our area. The first meeting with Curtis was eye-opening. She's going for blood, Nathan, he said after reviewing her initial demands. Half your retirement, the house, your investments, even your car, plus alimony that would basically leave you working to fund her lifestyle. I remember feeling numb as he talked. Can she actually get all that? Curtis leaned back in his chair. Well, that depends. How much do you know about your wife's finances? Apparently not enough, I said. That's when Curtis suggested something that would change everything. A completely legal but very strategic approach. One that would require me to play the long game and appear to be the defeated, passive husband she already thought I was. It would mean months of her thinking she was winning, months of me seeming to roll over and take it. But if it worked, trust me, Curtis said. I've seen this work before with people like your life. The greedier they are, the harder they fall. So I agreed to the plan. And that's how I found myself sitting across from Rachel and her shark of a lawyer, Philip, appearing to agree to almost everything they wanted. I deserve everything you own. She spat at me during one particularly heated mediation session. After wasting the best years of my life with you, I just nodded and looked down, playing the part perfectly. Her smug smile as she left the meeting told me everything. She thought she'd won, and I let her think that for now. What she didn't know was that I'd been playing chess while she was playing checkers, and over the coming months, she'd find out exactly what that meant. We'll update when there are developments. Update 1 to 3 months later. Thanks for all the support on my last post. Things have progressed over the past 3 months, though slower than I initially expected. Curtis warned me that divorce proceedings, especially complicated ones, can drag on for 6 to 12 months or more. Rachel's gotten even bolder since she thinks I've given up. She's been posting pics on social media with Theo in my car, drinking champagne and captioning it, "Upgrade complete," and "living my best life." Her sister Alicia even had the nerve to comment,
"You deserve this, Queen, after what you've been through."
like, SHE's the victim here. Unreal. Last week, she stopped by the house to pick up a few things, which apparently meant clearing out our shared office of anything valuable, including my grandfather's vintage watch collection that's been in my family for generations. When I texted her about it, she replied, "Oops, must have gotten mixed in with my stuff. Finders keepers. Besides, your lawyer said all assets are up for division. Smile." I called Curtis immediately, struggling to keep my cool. "Don't engage," she warned me. "Document everything, but do not confront her." That's exactly what she wants. You exploding so she can paint you as unstable. "But that watch collection is irreplaceable," I said, my voice shaking. "It wasn't even for me. I was supposed to pass it to my nephew someday." "I know it's hard," Curtis replied, "but we need to stick to the plan. Trust me, this is all going to come back to bite her." Then yesterday, I got a call from my bank. Apparently, someone had called pretending to be me, trying to get information about my personal savings account, the one I had before we were even married. The bank, following their security protocols, refused to provide any information without proper verification. When I checked my account online, with my new passwords that I changed the day after finding those texts, everything was intact. When I mentioned this to Curtis, he just smiled. She's getting desperate. Perfect. What Rachel doesn't realize is that while she's been parading around with Theo and taking what she can, I've been methodically documenting every violation, every prematurely seized asset, every attempted financial breach. And more importantly, I've been cooperating with a forensic accountant Curtis recommended. Meanwhile, I'm playing the role of defeated ex-husband perfectly. When her friends see me around town, I look tired, beaten down. I even let it slip to our mutual friend Elaine that I'm considering bankruptcy after the divorce is finalized. The news got back to Rachel within hours, just as we expected. She immediately called to gloat. "Bankruptcy? Really, Nathan? Guess you should have made better life choices." I mumbled something about just trying to get by, and she laughed before hanging up. What she doesn't know is that this bankruptcy talk is part of the plan. A plan that's working even better than Curtis and I had hoped, as Rachel's greed continues to cloud her judgment. The accountant has already found some concerning patterns, but says he needs at least another 2 months to complete a thorough investigation. I'll update again when there's more to share. Update 2. 6 months later. Sorry for the delay in updating. These past months have been a roller coaster, and the legal process has been moving at a glacial pace, just as Curtis warned me it would. Things have gone from bad to worse with Rachel's entitlement. She's now demanding items in the divorce that weren't even initially included, like my late mother's jewelry that was specifically left to me in her will. Her lawyer, Philip, had the audacity to claim these were marital assets because they were kept in our home safe. The latest low blow. Rachel somehow convinced my company's receptionist, an old friend of hers from college, to forward an email that appeared to come from me to HR, requesting paperwork for retirement contribution changes. Thankfully, my HR director called me directly to confirm, before processing anything. When I told Curtis about this attempt, he just nodded and added it to his growing file. "She's hanging herself with her own rope," he said. The forensic accountant Curtis hired has been meticulously combing through 5 years of our financial records. It's been painstaking work, but he's uncovered something disturbing. Small, consistent transfers from our joint accounts to a private account I knew nothing about. Initially, they looked like normal expenses: shopping, car maintenance, household purchases. But the receipts I found never matched the withdrawal amounts. The differences were small enough that I never noticed them individually, usually $50 to $200, but they added up to significant amounts over time. Theo, her boss-turned-boyfriend, joined her at the last mediation session, sitting in the waiting room like some kind of muscle. He even had the nerve to wink at me as I walked past. Later, I overheard him telling her, "Don't worry, babe. When this is over, we'll finally get that vacation property we've been talking about." What they don't know is that I've actually been recording all these chance conversations. One party concerned is legal, in our state, as Curtis confirmed. The entitlement in their voices when they don't think I'm listening is something else. Rachel's parents got involved last week too. Her dad, Howard, called me out of the blue. You know, Nathan, after everything Rachel did for you, supporting your career all these years, the least you could do is make this easy on her. Just give her what she wants and move on with some dignity. I nearly laughed. Supporting my career? She actively sabotaged a promotion opportunity 3 years ago because it would have meant relocating and inconveniencing her job. But I kept quiet, just mumbled some non-committal response. The hearing for temporary financial arrangements is next month, with the full divorce proceedings still months away. Rachel thinks she's about to secure access to substantial funds. She's even been looking at new cars and expensive condos online, according to what she's told mutual friends. I'll update after the hearing. Update 3. 8 months later. The temporary hearing 2 months ago was just a prelude to what happened yesterday at our formal settlement conference. At the temporary hearing, Rachel had gotten less than she wanted, but still enough to maintain her lifestyle while the divorce proceeded. She'd been smug, thinking the final settlement would give her everything. Yesterday was different. Rachel showed up dressed like she was attending a victory parade. Designer outfit, fresh manicure, even wearing some of my mother's jewelry, which made my blood boil, but I kept my poker face. Theo and her sister Alicia sat right behind her, all of them practically vibrating with anticipation. I noticed Philip, her lawyer, seemed a bit nervous, checking his phone constantly and whispering to Rachel, who kept dismissively waving him off. Looking back, I think he'd already figured out something was wrong, but couldn't get her to listen. Before the formal proceedings began, Curtis requested a private conference with the judge and Philip. Rachel shot me a suspicious glance, the first hint of uncertainty I'd seen from her in months. 40 minutes later, they returned to the conference room. Philip looked ashen. The judge's expression was stern. Only Curtis maintained his poker face. The judge cleared his throat. Before we proceed, there are some matters that have come to the court's attention regarding financial disclosures. Rachel sat up straighter, smoothing her skirt with false confidence. The judge continued. Mr. Bennett's counsel has submitted evidence that Mrs. Bennett has been concealing assets throughout these proceedings. Here's what our forensic accountant had uncovered over the past 8 months. Rachel had a private account containing nearly $287,000, money she'd been skilling from our joint finances for years through those small, consistent transfers I mentioned earlier. She'd hidden the statements and used a friend's address for all communications. This money legally should have been declared as part of our marital assets. But there was more. Additionally, the judge continued, the court has reviewed evidence suggesting Mrs. Bennett and her employer, Mr. Theodore Wells, have been engaged in questionable financial practices that may constitute expense account abuse. This was what had taken our accountant so long to uncover. While investigating Rachel's finances, he discovered a pattern. Rachel and Theo had been submitting duplicate expense reports at their company. She would expense client dinners, he would expense the same ones, and they'd split the reimbursements. I watched as Rachel paled. She turned to Philip, hissing something that looked like, "Do something." But there was nothing to do. Curtis methodically presented everything. Bank records, transfer statements, Rachel's own text messages with Theo discussing their financial arrangement, even the recorded conversations where they explicitly discussed hiding assets from the divorce proceedings. "Your Honor," Curtis said in his calm, measured voice, "in light of Mrs. Bennett's deliberate concealment of assets and apparent financial impropriety, we request that the proposed settlement be rejected and that Mrs. Bennett be held accountable for perjury in her financial disclosures to this court." The judge nodded gravely. "Mrs. Bennett, these are serious allegations with substantial supporting evidence. Your counsel will have opportunity to respond, but I will be continuing this hearing pending further review of these materials. The temporary arrangements will remain in place, but no final settlement will be approved until these matters are resolved. Theo had already slipped out of the conference room, answering a phone call that conveniently came in right as the evidence was being presented. Alicia sat frozen, her mouth hanging open. The hearing was continued to a date 6 weeks out. As we left, I saw Rachel frantically calling Theo, who wasn't answering. 3 days later, Curtis received a completely revised settlement offer from Philip. Rachel was suddenly willing to accept a much more reasonable division. No alimony, I would keep my retirement accounts intact, and she would return all family heirlooms, including my grandfather's watches and my mother's jewelry. The kicker? Rachel's company had begun an internal investigation based on the information that had inevitably made its way to them. Both she and Theo were placed on administrative leave pending the results. Yesterday, 8 months after that initial divorce filing, we finally signed the settlement papers. I didn't get everything. She still took her fair share of our truly joint assets. But I protected what mattered most: my retirement, my family heirlooms, and my future earnings. As we left the attorney's office after signing, Rachel finally spoke directly to me for the first time in months. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice cold, but noticeably lacking its usual confidence.
You've ruined everything.
I just looked at her for a moment. "No, Rachel, you did that all by yourself." Later that evening, the texts started rolling in. First from her dad. "You've destroyed her life. I hope you're satisfied." Then from Alicia. "Only a small, petty man would do what you did. She loved you once." I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, I learned from a former colleague that both Rachel and Theo had been terminated following the company's investigation. Their expense account scheme had apparently been going on for years, longer than their affair. As for me, I'm selling the house, too many memories, and moving to a different city for a fresh start. The company I work for has an office there and approved my transfer request. Sometimes winning doesn't feel like you'd expect. There's no triumphant music, no credits rolling over a happy ending. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to destroy everything I'd worked for, I didn't let them. And that's enough. Edit. To answer some common questions. No, I don't feel bad about the professional consequences Rachel and Theo face. That's on them for what they chose to do. Yes, I got all my family heirlooms back as part of the final settlement. For those asking if I'd known about the hidden money all along, no. That was the forensic accountant's discovery after months of meticulous investigation. My secret was simply having the foresight to hire the right professionals instead of fighting fire with fire. Sometimes the best revenge isn't some elaborate scheme. It's just letting people's own actions catch up to them while you stay one step ahead.